Hi, this is Salim Bhartia, and welcome to another episode of TFR Newsroom. And today we have with us Mike Kelly, CTO of ObservIQ. Mike, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Let's get into the story and history of ObservIQ. If I'm not wrong, you are rebranding, repositioning yourself. So talk a bit about the emergence, the origin story of ObservIQ.
So a lot of folks may be familiar with Blue Medora. If you've worked in the monitoring space or have used tools, and Blue Medora had been around for over 10 years, really, and has always been focused in the monitoring observability space. So both metrics and logs. What we did for many years is really focus on expanding existing platforms. So if you had a platform, for example, VMware's vRealize operations, used to monitor all kinds of things in the virtual world. Well, Blue Medora would come in and expand that to also support metrics and logs in the server world, the data center world, but also the cloud components and databases, applications. So it's always been our focus to build these integrations out to allow and expand the visibility that you would get from a platform. And we've done that with a number of companies, VMware, we've worked with IBM and Oracle, Google more recently, and a number of others within the monitoring space. Roughly 2 weeks ago, because we had this very close relationship with VMware, and that portion of the business just grew, incredibly quickly. It was such a big benefit to customers of that solution. We ultimately decided, and with VMware, that the best choice was to sell that part of the part of the business to VMware. So now, these days, you can get what's called the True Visibility Suite, those components that were built by Blue Medora directly from VMware. But the company's continuing on, and that wasn't the only focus. Aside from the VMware business, we've been moving very quickly to a SaaS solution, and it's a platform called BindPlane that does the same type of things. It takes all of those integrations, hundreds of integrations that we built, and allows you to use those within a SaaS offering. So that means, for example, we have a partnership with Google Cloud. And using BindPlane, you can send metrics and log data from any of the sources that we provide to your Google Cloud monitoring solution. And that's kind of how we got here. And when we sold that business unit to VMware, a lot of what was recognized about Blue Medora was this, that we did do this component because it was such a big portion of the business. It was tied to VMware. And so what we're really doing by relaunching, rebranding is, number one, focusing on this core of the business that we're continuing on with BindPlane, and also represents a shift in focus to logs specifically. So it's something we've been doing for many years, but really over the last 2 years, we've just seen some big gaps in the market, and we're launching ObservIQ to really address those.
So the customers that Blue Medora had, some moved through that acquisition, but you still have a lot of customers you're serving. Should they have any concern or worries about this rebranding? Will anything change for them?
For those customers, nothing's changing. And in fact, I think, from our perspective, this is a great way to focus in on what we're doing. So there's actually more energy is going to that part of the business. In fact, we're really excited because all the things that we'll talk about and things that are coming are going to benefit those customers. So all the improvements that we're making in the log space, those are all going to get rolled out to existing customers very quickly. And some of them already have. So some of these things that are moving, the open source log agent that I'm sure we'll talk about, they're already available for those customers.
Now let's talk about the tech piece a bit. If you look at the cloud native world, as companies are on their digital transformation journey, what is the role of observability and log there?
A lot of it depends on what your position in that journey is. What we see specifically for logs, and it's helpful to think of it as what's changed over the last couple of years. That's the way I tend to think of it anyway. And what we've realized is, logs were in the past, maybe they weren't necessarily something that was required or assumed to be available in a centralized location. And that's changed pretty dramatically. Now the expectation is that if you really want to provide full observability, and that is a component, that's telemetry that you need to view, both for security reasons, but also for and it started out as security. I think that was a primary use case, but it's expanded to DevOps and IT ops. You really need to be able to see everything that's going on in your applications and have the ability to drill in quickly, identify problems, and resolve them. And logs are a core component of that. And from our perspective, they've been neglected in certain ways. There are areas that that hasn't kept up as well, particularly when you're looking at the DevOps and IT ops solutions for logs. And over the last 2 years, I think what we've seen with our customers is the amount of data, the amount of log data that's being consumed has gone up exponentially. And that's something that it hasn't fully been addressed, but it's something that is a concern for customers. There's an expectation that you are consuming and storing all that data, but also that you're managing costs, right? Because like, it's very expensive to be able to handle all that log data at once. So it's kind of where I see this as, it's become, for the last couple of years, this has become a required component in any organization. And folks are struggling with how to manage that, how to manage costs, how to use that for their applications, for the DevOps and IT ops logs.
As you rightly said earlier, that Blue Medora has been around for so long, 10 years or so. But a lot of things are changing in the cloud native space. They're changing at a very fast pace. And now you are rebranding yourself, repositioning yourself. So is there any kind of problem that you saw in the space? You did touch upon a few, but I just want to specify that you wanted to solve. That's why you are getting into this field with this new identity.
There have been several, but the kind of the core problem that we're focused on with observIQ is the challenge in consuming, parsing, sending logs, very high throughput. That's been one of the areas where things have broken down in the past. So if I talk about the Elastic Stack generally, that's been where folks tend to send their logs. If you're not going to a SIM and you have IT ops and DevOps logs, a lot of folks are going to choose that. And we've worked with a lot of customers on this, and the problem that we kept running into over and over again was it wasn't at the back end, the Elasticsearch storage layer. It wasn't at the visualization layer. People were satisfied with those tools. Where it was starting to fall apart was at the log agent level. And what we saw was our largest customers, when they were going from a commercial SIM for their security logs to these open source platforms, they found that the log agent wasn't able to keep up with the amount of data that they were sending at it. Right. And so that's a major issue. If you have potentially thousands or tens of thousands of these agents deployed across your system, they're all using high resources, high CPU and memory usage. They can be difficult to configure, difficult to deploy. That was really what our focus started at. And that's what we're announcing and launching with the launch of observIQ. The first thing that we're putting out there is an open source log agent that addresses these problems. So it's over 10 times faster in terms of less CPU usage, less memory usage, but not just that. So that's, when I talked about cost, that's kind of one of the big components. If you imagine that this is deployed across your cloud environment to thousands of systems, that has a major impact. If you can reduce that by 90% or more, you're saving a lot of money just in cloud computing costs. But beyond that, it's for some of our largest customers who are sending terabytes per day or terabytes per hour. It's not just saving money on CPU. It's how much can you actually send, and where do things start to fall apart? And a lot of the existing log agents today, they simply can't handle that type of throughput. So you've effectively eliminated this solution for some of your biggest customers, and the folks that we're dealing with, Fortune 500 customers, are trying to solve a problem. And that's why we thought the first place to start is, number one, we need to solve that, because right now that's a blocker, and that's preventing folks from adopting this stack. So we did that. That's out and that's available. We see it as a replacement for a lot of the agents that you're using now, like FluentD or Logstash. It's a high performance replacement, but it maintains that same level of configurability. It still has a full plugin library that you can use for all of the existing applications that you have. So that's kind of our first step. That's the first problem. What we will be releasing in going into beta in about a month now is observIQ Cloud. And that's really where we start to pull everything together into a full solution. So, we're releasing the log agent. We're building on top of the Elastic Stack backend, so using Elasticsearch and Kibana, and then including our existing product BindPlane to provide a full lifecycle management of those agents. And so for folks who aren't familiar with BindPlane, this was really a product that's kind of revolutionized how you manage agents across your environment. It makes it very simple to deploy, makes it simple to to push changes, to push updates to the agents, even in very large landscapes. So, we've been talking, and I talked about environments where you have thousands or tens of thousands, because that's what our customers are using. What BindPlane allows you to do is push an update to all of those, all at the same time with the click of a button. So you're not dealing with reconfiguring, you're not dealing with going in and making updates. One of the great things that this allows us to do, and this is kind of what I consider one of the killer features of observIQ Cloud, is, in the past, you had to determine how much data do you want to stream. So upfront, you need to say, I want to gather all the logs from all of my databases, and I want to get down to the debug or the info level. That's a lot of data. That's expensive data to store. Because we have this full management capability, we can allow our customers to say, let's just look for errors to start. So we're not going to send all the data. We're just going to look at errors initially. And then if you do have an incident, you can click a button, and that will turn on and increase the log level to start sending the fire hose of data, so that you can really dig in to find out what's going on. And that's something that's not possible with any of the other platforms out there right now. Typically the previous option was you would have to go into a box, reconfigure it, maybe restart the agent. It's not realistic when you're dealing with an outage or an issue. But what we're allowing customers to do is, at a click of the button, we're going to turn this on, increase the data that's coming through, stream that in a live tail of the log, and allow you to diagnose what's going on, while at the same time saving, you're not required to store all of that data all the time.
Now, if you look at the True Visibility suite, which was like closely tied to VMware, and then it became part of VMware. Is observIQ Cloud is also tied to a particular vendor cloud, or it's kind of vendor neutral and it supports multi-cloud?
Yeah, this is a little different. This isn't tied directly to a vendor, and that's similar to our BindPlane product. We work with a number of vendors. In fact, we have a very tight partnership with Google and their Google Cloud platform, providing the same log and monitoring capabilities. So if you already have a platform that you are using, we want to be able to support that. What we're doing in releasing with observIQ Cloud is for those customers that maybe don't have a platform yet but are looking for a solution, we provide that full end-to-end solution, something that you can use without necessarily needing an existing platform.
How much open source are you leveraging? How much of observIQ is open source?
There is, we're very focused on open source. The log agent that we just released is fully open source under Apache 2.0. We use pretty extensively open source technologies on the back end, when you're talking about Elasticsearch or Kibana. And then on top of that, we do build additional functionalities like any SaaS service does to provide, things like alerting capabilities that there isn't a great off-the-shelf option. I expect in the future we'll start to contribute those back to the open source community as well. But at the moment, there are some components that aren't. I think that it's critical, and it's critical to our customers right now. There's such a focus and interest in open source technology, and that's become kind of the standard. Folks tend to be hesitant, the folks that we're talking to adopt something that isn't for this type of use case. And so, we believe in that, and going forward, that's been a major focus of our development efforts.
If you look at open source, open source solves day one problem. You can get the project or product, install it. What about day two? That's where commercial support comes around that, where you have dedicated teams. So, and also you also dedicate resources. Even if there are a lot of open source projects which are kind of vendor neutral. You contribute it to a foundation or you develop in public, and even your competitors come and contribute to it. But having a commercial model behind it does ensure the sustainability of that project. So now you have launched a company in the middle of, in the midst of a pandemic. So that's kind of brave. But there are a lot of companies, because right now this is the time where it might seem that the world has come to a standstill, but that is not the case. We are stuck in our houses, but we are still functional. We are running our businesses from home. We still need food. We still need to. So actually, IT is the one which is running the world, to be honest. Everything else. So launching a company in the middle of a pandemic because you're trying to solve a problem that a lot of companies need to solve. So that is a good move. So explain what was the reason behind launching it now, number one. Number two is, what does your roadmap look like for 2020?
I'll be honest with you. This wasn't a preferred environment to start a company in, right? I think that it's been quite a challenge, as it has for everyone. I think in the tech space, we're very fortunate that we can work from home, and that our businesses have been impacted far less than other folks out there. But look, it's not ideal. I think from our perspective, maybe it has had less of an impact because we're really focused in the last quarter to 3 to 6 months on finishing up and just building a lot of these components that are out there now. So I guess if there was ever a time, for a pandemic, it's when you really need to buckle down and everyone needs to be at their computer and building this software that we're going to release. So, as I said, I think we're fortunate. Folks have already been working from home before. It's been a pretty flexible, work environment, as it is in a lot of companies in the tech space. But we're looking forward to getting back into an office too, I think, and being around each other. When it comes to our roadmap over 2020, we just launched the open source agent. We're going to go to beta with our ObservIQ cloud in a month, and that will be GA in the fall. So that's a pretty big release right there, and all of our effort is behind getting that's done. But immediately after, I think one of the unique things about our position, and it will be, going through towards the end of 2020, is that with BindPlane, we already have developed these metric integrations. So we have metric capabilities that are available when we turn it on. So I think our focus on logs is important because we need to, I think that there's a major problem that we're solving there. But the next step is really expanding that platform to include metrics as well, and then beyond that to APM. So I think that you'll see a lot of rapid development there, and over the next 6 to 12 months, a lot of changes. Right now, though, the focus is on ObservIQ Cloud and the log platform, making sure that we solve that key problem.
Mike, thank you so much for taking your time out and talking about ObservIQ and explaining all those, kind of, it's for more about the ecosystem itself, how the space itself is evolving. And as you mentioned, a lot of things are there in the pipeline. So I look forward to talk to you again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great talking with you.